and said, look, looking for apartments is it's cool and all, but that's not going to be the application of the technology that finds wide adoption and has a great business model. Let's look for something else. Let's look for an activity on the web that a lot of people do, and has a good business model associated with it, where there's lots of information all over the web and you have to pull it together in one place and people are searching for it. So the example that we came up with, the application that we ended up coming up with was looking for jobs, right? Jobs classifieds. People are looking for jobs. There are job listings on the websites of many companies, and if you can put it all together in one place, and it'll really help somebody look for a job. So that was the idea. So it's a very early version of Monitor or one of these job listings boards that we have today, right? So that's what we built. That was the first version that we built, the universal job listing finder that integrated job listing from all the websites of multiple companies. And then so we did this, and by this time, by the time we built this, we had the seed funding from Rajaraman, but we realized that to scale, we needed a larger round of funding. So naturally, we went and talked to all the VCs on Sand Hill Road and told them, look, here's a job listings engine. There's this multi-billion-dollar classifieds industry in the newspaper world. This is going to totally disrupt. So this is a good investment. You should totally invest in this. The VCs looked at it, scratched their heads, and said no. And it was very hard for us to understand then what was going on. But thinking back, it was, I think what was going on then was the same phenomenon. It was, it was a team, right? So we were these students from Stanford who had never done anything before. And in those days, it was still rare for students to just go start a company and do something, and for VCs from Sand Hill Road to back it. VCs from Sand Hill Road were used to investing in experienced people and in professors from Stanford and so on who started companies. I mean, there have been lots of success stories of companies from places like Stanford, but usually they were professors. The only example before that was Yahoo, right? That had been students that had founded it. This was in '96, so we had a very tough time. We went to pretty much every VC on Sand Hill Road and asked for capital, and were turned away. And in fact, until recently, I even had some of those rejection letters, and they actually made for funny reading. So one of them thanked us for our video processing technology and said, sorry, we're not interested. So clearly, either we were not doing a good job of explaining it, or it just didn't resonate. So what to do? So what did we finally end up doing? We finally ended up connecting with the Washington Post. The Washington Post, as you know, is this major newspaper on the East Coast, and they're a very big company, and one of the major newspaper companies in the US. And they were wise enough to see that the internet was going to disrupt the big classified business that the newspapers had, which represents a large, or used to represent, not anymore, the internet has already disrupted it, a large fraction of their revenues. So they thought, look, the internet is going to disrupt it, so we need to have a play here. So the Washington Post said, look, why don't you take the technology that you have for doing classified listings and use that to power the classified listings on WashingtonPost.com, and we'll be your first customer, and we'll also be your investor. Right? So we ended up raising funding from our first customer, which was the Washington Post company, and we didn't raise too much funding afterwards. So that was a significant. A significant amount of funding, and we worked with several newspapers and got this, got our technology deployed and so on in the classified space. Now, so that was great. I mean, we were having a good time. We worked with many newspaper companies and deployed our classified listings on them. Well, the thing that very often happens with technology companies is that the first thing that you do, even though it has early promise, doesn't always pan out, right? So, and now, if that doesn't happen, the thing, it depends on, entrepreneurs do different things. Some of them just give up. Others see whether you can change some element of what you're doing so that you can take it forward, right? So you can apply your technology to a different space, or change some element of what you're doing to make it work better. And in fact, this happens so often that these days there's a word for it. It's called a pivot, right? So this is a word that sort of come in vogue in the last year or so. But so we did one of the earliest pivots back in 1997. So what we actually I'm going to talk about multiple pivots. So this is where it's going to get non-chronological, right? I'm going to talk about pivots from multiple companies. So at Jungly, what we figured out was that this newspaper thing, it was great. We were working with all the big newspapers in the US by then, empowering multiple of them. But it wasn't bringing in that much revenues. And it was very hard dealing with newspaper companies. They were these old line companies, and it takes forever to make decisions, bureaucracies, things like this. Very hard dealing with newspaper companies, very traditional companies. And it was just, our sales cycles were incredibly long, just really hard. So we said, look, that's great. So that business is going. It's not, it's fine. It's paying for the bread and butter, but it's not in this explosive hockey stick takeoff mode that we really want, right? So what do we do? And so we said, look, can we take our technology, which is about taking information that's in multiple websites and putting it together in one place? Is there another application area where this will work well and where there are bigger growth opportunities? So we started looking around, and one of the obvious answers is shopping, right? By the time there were already many websites that were selling products. This was 97 now. Amazon had launched by then, and there were many other websites that were selling products. People if you wanted to buy a product, you had to go to multiple websites. Some of them might have it cheaper than others. You didn't know what the cheapest place was for a given product, so it made sense to compare it and shop. So we said, we can take our technology, which we're applying to classifieds, and apply it to products. We can build a product search engine where anybody can type in any product, and we'll tell you where it's available and what the best price is. And so we were thinking about this, and we had started working on this, and we were planning to launch it maybe in 2-3 months. Then all of a sudden, something interesting happened. Yahoo came to us, which Yahoo had already gone public by then. It was a big company. Yahoo came to us, on a Friday evening, and said, "Look, we want to launch shopping on Yahoo Shopping, and we want a partner. Can you build shopping for us?" So he said, "Of course. We already have it almost built." And the Yahoo said, "Well, then it was Friday. On Monday, you can come into our office and give us a demo." So we said, "Of course, we'll come to your office on Monday and give you a demo." Right? So we worked over the weekend, right? So that's what it meant. We worked over the weekend, and we actually had because we had most of the technology already built, and we'd already been thinking about the problems involved. We just hadn't, it was still, just 3 months out. But we built a version of a comparison shopping engine over the weekend. And on Monday, we actually went and we gave a demo to Jerry Yang and Zod and other people at Yahoo. And we ended up doing a business deal with them shortly thereafter to power Yahoo Shopping. Right? So, and that was and that really took off. The shopping search engine really took off. And then it was syndicated not just on Yahoo, but on pretty much every other website. AOL was big in those days, and many other sites, and got us a lot of traffic. So that really was a hockey stick kind of takeoff that we had through that opportunity. So that was one of the pivots we did. So also now sort of jumping non-chronologically to Cosmix, the company that I more recently did, we had a pivot there as well. So it is rare that you start a company and you don't have to pivot. So at Cosmix, we were doing this. We had developed this amazing technology which we still have. It's called Semantic Analysis. Right? The idea is that you can think of a document or something as a bunch of words, or you can really try to understand its meaning. You can try to understand what is somebody saying in a document or in a Facebook status or a tweet, and get deeper into the meaning of what they were doing. And so the semantic analysis technology that we developed at Cosmix does precisely that. And when we first developed this technology, and we started Cosmix in in around 2005, we thought, look, the best application for this is search. We can build a better search engine than Google, as Rajaraman was saying, by using semantic analysis. Google doesn't understand the meanings of documents. It thinks they are just bunches of words. Here we have the semantic analysis technology that understands the meaning of documents. So we can build a much better search engine than Google. Right? So that was the idea when we started Cosmix, and we actually built it. Now what we discovered is that it's not quite the right market to apply the technology. First, it's tough to build a search engine. It's a cash, it takes a lot of cash to compete with Google. And two, people, are quite happy with their existing search experience, and unless you have the marketing dollars of a Microsoft, right? It's hard to get them to switch their search behavior. So we had success in sort of some limited vertical areas, like health, for instance. We built a health search engine, which is much better than searching on Google or Bing, called Right Health, and that became the number 2 health search engine in the world. And second only to WebMD, but we couldn't quite make it scale horizontally and become the next big search engine. So we had this wonderful technology. We had a great success with Right Health, which is the number 2 health search engine, but we couldn't make it scale horizontally and take on Google or Yahoo. So we had to pivot. So what we noticed at Cosmix at around that time was social networking was taking off. So we started Cosmix in 2005. By around 2008, 2009, we could see social networking taking off, and sites like Facebook and Twitter had huge growing volumes of traffic and lots of data being created there. So we said, can we take the same technology that we developed at Cosmix and apply it to social networks, the data that's being created on social networks? So we did that, and we ended up creating a site called TweetBeat and a technology called the Social Genome, which really took off, and that's what led to the acquisition of Cosmix by Walmart. So once again, there was a pivot there as well. And there is another example of a pivot. Some of you may have heard of this thing called Amazon Mechanical Turk. So this is a completely different story. This is sometime in between Junglee and Cosmix. Venki and I were running a venture capital firm called Cambrian Ventures, and we thought. So we were running this venture capital firm called Cambrian Ventures, and we came up with this idea, that seemed interesting, which is, look, humans are, machines, computers are really great at some kind of tasks, right? They can do things repeatedly, run things fast, and things like that, crunch numbers. But they're terrible at something that humans find very easy, like finding people in pictures or things like this, right? Humans are very, very easy, find it incredibly easy to do some things, like some pattern recognition tasks that machines find incredibly hard to do, like identifying people in pictures. So we said, look, what if you could build a system that combined the best of humans and machines into one system, right? So we actually started a company around that idea, and we sort of thought the right thing to do is to now take this company and find customers for this new technology. We were talking to a bunch of companies to get this technology adopted, and then that's around the time when September 11, 2001 happened, and it was hard to find customers for anything for a while. And so we decided this is a hard project; it's not going to take off. What should we do with it? And that's around the time that Jeff Bezos is an investor in Cambrian Ventures, because of the fact that Junglee was bought by Amazon. We've always worked closely with Jeff Bezos, and we were telling him about this technology. And he said, look, I'll just buy the patent from you, right? And I want to do this within Amazon. So we sold him the patent for the idea that we had. And then Jeff Bezos bought it, and he renamed it Amazon Mechanical Turk. And it's taken off, right? So he's, of course, it's been a pivot. It's sort of changed in many significant ways, but it's still the same core idea. So the point of all this I'm trying to tell you is that, look, in many cases, the idea doesn't work the first time. You have to change some element of it, and it takes time, and it takes a lot of effort. But sometimes it pays off, and then it feels really good. moving on. So back to Jungli, right? So this is back in 1998 now, and Jungli was a startup, and there were many other startups, and we had to get people to visit our website. We had to get noticed by investors. We had to get noticed by users. We had to get noticed by partners. So we had to get PR, right? We had to get a lot of press, and so we were wondering how to do this. And one of our PR people had an interesting idea, right? And so so that's Rakesh Mathur, my co-founder, whose picture you saw earlier. Except he's smiling very coyly in a little black dress, so what happened was that there's around this time there's a company called Crossworlds, and Crossworlds, the CEO of Crossworlds was this woman named Katrina Garnett, so they were taking out all these full-page ads in Business Week and Fortune and all these magazines with Katrina Garnett in a black dress, and it just said Crossworlds underneath. They didn't even say what the company's business was, and this was a company selling some kind of abstruse enterprise technology or something like this. So people found it very interesting because it was generating a lot of chatter. So we said, let's play off this thing, right, and get some publicity on the cheap, right? So I think Crossworlds spent millions of dollars on the marketing campaign. We didn't have millions of dollars, right? But we wanted to get some of that publicity. So one of our marketing folks had this brilliant idea. So we have this comparison shopping engine, where you can find any product. Why not put together an outfit similar to Katrina Garnett's on the cheap, right? Using a comparison shopping engine, find a cheap black dress, find this cheap locket, find the cheap earring, find the cheapest of everything, and have Rakesh wear all of that, right? and put it out on the web, and this is what is called a publicity stunt, right? So we and again, to our surprise and horror, Rakesh actually agreed to this, right? So he's a true sport. So he agreed to this. So we actually, I still remember the day when Rakesh was, dressed up and walking around the office wearing these things. We took this photo and put it out there. And this was picked up by pretty much every single newspaper, every single magazine and newspaper and everything in town. So we got all this free press, right? For out of this one photo, we got our startup noticed and on the map, right? So these days, I think it's easier to do it on Facebook and Twitter and blogs and so on, but those didn't exist in those days, right? So I wouldn't do this again, but this was before Facebook and Twitter and blogs. Great. So remember, complete the circle. Remember, I dropped out of Stanford. I started Jungli. It was bought by Amazon. But around that time, I had this. After Jungli was bought by Amazon, I had this feeling. Look, I want to complete my PhD. Why should I leave that thing unfinished? And my mom back home was saying, beta, you should go finish that. You shouldn't leave that unfinished, kind of thing, right? So I said, fine, okay, let me go do that. So I had to come back to Stanford to finish my PhD. But to come back to Stanford, I had to talk to the gentleman again, right? And tell him, look, Jeff, I want to come back and I want to finish my PhD. So I went and talked to Jeff, and Jeff said, yeah, come back, finish your PhD, but on one condition, okay? You're not going to get financial aid, you're going to pay your own fees. Right? So Stanford fees are expensive, as I found out then, right? But, so I did pay my own fees. For a year, so because I was paying my own fees, I finished up very quickly. was there hardly for a year. I wrote my PhD. I got my thesis done in 2001, and then one of the other professors at Stanford, Hector, who was the chairman of the computer science department, I had to go to him to get him to sign my thesis, and he said, "Look, I'll sign your thesis, but on one condition, right? Look, there is this class that I'm supposed to teach next quarter, but I'm busy. So you have to teach that class instead of me." Right? So I said, okay, I had to get him to sign my thesis, so I said, okay. So he signed my thesis, and so I became, not only did I finish my PhD, I ended up becoming a consulting faculty member at Stanford, and then started teaching classes at Stanford. And most recently, I worked with Jeff to publish a textbook. So that's the guy holding like a big nugget of gold. So it's called mining of math. So there's a miner who's mining some kind of massive data set or something like this. It's finding some gold. So and I'll tell you, the best way to write a textbook is to have as a co-author who's published many textbooks, right? So this so it makes life much very, very simple, right? So we have this textbook out there. So that completes my kind of academic career. So how to find? So then I started Cambrian, and I had to find startups to invest. How did I find startups to invest? Well, if your co-founder who wore a dress comes to you and says, "Look, I have a startup," you have to invest in it. It's like that simple as that, right? So Rakesh came to me and said, "I have this startup, Weberoo, invest in it." So I invested in it, and it became SMS Gupshup, which is kind of the Twitter of India. Here's another one. So Kashyap was one of the brightest people in one of the other companies that we had invested in. And he came to me one day and said, "Look, I'm going to go to India and I'm going to start this company called Chopati where I'm going to do phone commerce." So I ended up investing in that, and that ended up being bought by a company called Future Bazaar in India. You can actually go use that today. So here's another story. So I was at Stanford teaching classes when there was this guy Mayank who was my TA. He was my teaching assistant. And at the end of the class, he came and told me, "Look, I want to start this company based on what we learned in class." And I said, "Well, that's fine, but go ahead and build me a prototype to show me that you can do it and you're serious." And so he went and he actually built a prototype. So I ended up investing in that company. And that company was a company called Aster Data that does large-scale data analysis. Ended up being bought by Teradata recently with a big acquisition a few months ago. I think Mike might even be here talking about his story in a couple of months' time. And finally, a great place to find startups to invest in is TIE. Just like we got funding. I was at TiECon a few years ago when I found this great startup to invest in called YouSendIt, which many of you may have heard about. So this is a startup that where I met the founders at TIE. They were just doing demos. I ended up seed funding that company, and it's doing really well, right? So here's one more final story. So there was this. This was just to illustrate the connections between different things, right? So the gentleman on top, his name is Alon Halevi, and he was a researcher at a place called AT&T Bell Labs in those days. It doesn't exist anymore. And I was at Stanford. I was a summer intern working for him in 1995. Okay? So a summer intern working for Alon in 1995. And then Alon left Bell Labs and he went to University of Washington where he became a professor. And I, went on to start Junglee, Amazon, and then Cambridge Ventures. And then Alon and I connected when he started a company called Transformic. And he was doing some technology around crawling the web, right? So I ended up investing in that company, and they ended up being bought by Google. If I sort of look back on my career and think about what are the three big things that have been made a difference in my life, right? The first is, of course, the amazing, talented, wonderful people that I've had the luck of meeting and working with: Rajaraman, Rakesh, Ashish, Venki, all the startup founders that I mentioned, all the people who I work with at Cosmix, at Junglee, and so on. So that's definitely one. The whole Stanford and Silicon Valley ecosystem is another, right? So which TIE is part of that, the ecosystem has been great. But the third thing, which I'm sure you've heard about these things before, so I wanted to talk about the third thing, which I just made up last night. It's called the virtuous triangle, right? So the virtuous triangle is this, right? If I look back at my career and think about all the stuff that I've done, right? I've done three things. I've been an academic, I've been an entrepreneur, and I've been an investmentor, right? I've been an investor and a mentor in many different companies, and I've done all these things simultaneously over the past 10 or 12 years. The interesting thing is these things kind of feed off each other in a very interesting way, and that's, I think, one of the big cycles, that's engines that have got me where I've gotten. One is you sort of academia was what gave me my first idea to start a company and the people I started it with. And the fact, and because of being an entrepreneur, I got experience to mentor other people. And then that tells me all about trends so that I can start other companies. It gives me more ideas to work on as an academic. So there's all kinds of interesting virtuous loops in this thing. I would seriously recommend. Many of you, many people do entrepreneurship and investing, but I think it's very interesting to have a foot in academia as well. If not as a teacher, then as a student, perhaps, right? Because academia is kind of an environment where there's always fresh things happening. There's always churn happening. There's always interesting students you meet with wonderful ideas. I think, and it keeps you fresh. So I think it's that cycle that's been responsible for a lot of my success. So I'm going to stop there say, I was told this was going to be my story, but in reality that's really wrong. This is really our story, and this is a story of all the people that I've had the honor and privilege of working with in all these wonderful companies, and some that are not here. Thanks.
Story and lots of words of wisdom. So we'll have some questions. Tyler-san, could you please also come up? So we'll have a few questions and we'll open it up to the audience.
Yeah, there you go.
Okay, looks like some of the questions I was thinking, but Anand, you already answered a lot of them. So one question I wanted to ask you was, could you share, I know you said like you're more like an accidental entrepreneur. Do you guys hear me? Yeah. I can, and it's telling me to take the mic.
3. He's on 3.
Can you hear me now?
He's on 3. Go ahead.
Hello? Yeah. So, so one question I wanted to find out, could you share any stories of your early days of growing up in Chennai, which you think may have, in hindsight, influenced your becoming an entrepreneur?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think, so should I use the mic? Can you hear me? You can hear me? Okay, good. So, I think in Chennai, I think one of the things growing up in the 80s in a place like Chennai is that it's kind of a hyper-competitive environment academically, right? So you're really pushed to do well academically, and I was one of those people who was pushed to do well academically, and I'm sure that helped in some ways. I never really thought about starting companies or anything of that nature. The IIT education, when I did get into IIT Madras, that was one of the most fun times of my life, as many of us who've been to the IITs can attest. It's a wonderful place, and I met a lot of very interesting people who then went on to start great companies who I've had the privilege of working with later. I met many future employees, people who I invested in, things like that through the IIT network. So that really was hugely important.
One question for Tyler-san. So I was curious, like, what kind of due diligence you did on his company when you invested first time?
Number 10, right? I just what I told him, yeah.
Yeah, it works.
Thank you. Good question. Anand and I went to the MIT to speak to the student, and the professor is coordinating. How did you do diligence to invest in this company? These young people don't know what's there needed. So I said, okay, that's very simple. So I took my coin. I did. So I did invested. So unfortunately at that time I dropped my coin to the floor. The professor already picked up. Can I keep this coin? Yes, that's good. You can have this. This is wonderful stuff. So somebody catch this one. So I lost 25 cents at the conference. But anyway, because of my electrical engineering, I don't have any idea about what is a computer software those. So when I met first those group of people, Rakesh, I know 10 years before we met, so other three guys, Benki, Ashish, and Anand, they have very special, they have a fire in their eye. So I said, wow, these guys are some different. That's why I decided to invest. And I asked 7 people from my Taiwan investor. At that time, Taiwan people are very rich. They have big money. So I asked, I will allocate special deal for you. Put 100,000 each. Oh, they are so happy. So they are even allocating to the fighting their allocation. I want to 200,000. So no, just 100,000 each. 7 people. So we got 700,000. Unfortunately, I have only 500,000. I put money. I have a Japanese company executive and underpaid and hard work. I have only $50,000. I put $50,000. That is a start in seed money.
Can I keep this coin now?
Oh yeah.
Okay, so we are going to open it to the audience.
So you hear all the time about how first-time entrepreneurs are very successful, like Mark Zuckerberg or even Bill Gates. But then on the opposite side, VCs only want to invest in general with entrepreneurs who have a deep track record. How do you explain that disconnect?
No, it's a good question, right? And I think that's changing now because of successes like Mark Zuckerberg. I always said that the more experience an entrepreneur has, it's kind of an alpha beta game. The lower the risk of failure, but also you reduce the alpha as well a little bit, right? So when you're young and when you're sort of not very experienced, you take risks and you believe things are possible that you would think are impossible if you have more experience. That's why I think young entrepreneurs tend to have really big outcomes. Whereas, second time and third time entrepreneurs tend to be less risky but have, on average, smaller outcomes than when they are successful than first time entrepreneurs. It's an alpha beta game. Now, VCs, at the end of the day, think about a typical VC, right? They have very little information when they are making an investment, right? You have to look at 3 factors when making an investment. It's team, it's technology, and it's market. Market is, you have no idea if this market is going to work or not. You can make an educated guess. Technology, you can have somebody evaluate it. But team is something that you can really understand. Look, have these guys done something before? Is this a bet that I can make? So that's the reason why VCs have tended to do that in the past. But now I think things are changing. There are outfits like Y Combinator that are disrupting the whole VC model by providing money to really young entrepreneurs who started big companies like Airbnb is one of them, and there are many companies that have been benefiting from Y Combinator and people like that.
So, like you mentioned that you raised your first funding from Washington Post.
That's right.
So, maybe you can tell us more about how you raised that, or how much you raised, or a little bit more about
sure.
What you did.
So the Washington Post, in those days, we showed them what we had done in the classified space, and they had the foresight to realize that the internet was going to disrupt the classifieds business, partly based on what we showed them, which they extrapolated. And if classifieds in those days accounted for 60% of the revenue of newspapers or something like that, and so it was their cash cow. And they could see that it was going to get disrupted. So I sort of think it was more of a defensive play than anything else. They wanted to make sure that they participated in whatever was going to disrupt them. In terms of how much we raised at that time, I think it was about $5 million or so was what we ended up raising from the Washington Post. It was a fairly lengthy negotiation process, and with a big corporate company and so on. So.
Hi, Anand. I'm wondering what a retail giant like Walmart wanted from the social genome technology.
Mm-hmm. Got it. So, one way to do this is to step back and think about the fact that, whenever there's a big change in the way consumers behave, some kind of fundamental technological change that changes consumer behavior, the retail industry goes through a shift, goes through a disruption. I'll take you back like maybe 50 years ago. The biggest technological disruption that happened 50 years ago was, or 60 years ago, was the construction of the U.S. highway system. When the U.S. highway system was constructed, that changed people's lifestyles. They could drive long distances, and that led to big innovation called big box retailing, right? So that's what led to Walmart and all these big stores that are situated close to the highway, but not really close to any big town. So that was, and then about 20 years ago, the big change that happened in consumer behavior was the internet and the World Wide Web, and that led to another big disruption in retailing called e-commerce. If you look at what's going on right now, there are two big changes that are happening in consumer behavior, and both are happening at the same time. One is social networking, and the other is smartphones. Right? So you have people spending more and more time on social networks, and people carrying around these powerful computers that are location aware. When people start spending more and more time on social and mobile, if you think about why, in retail, the biggest thing is location, right? Stores are in downtown areas for a reason, because that's where people spend their time. So if people are spending their time on social media, Facebook, and on mobile, that's where they're going to be shopping eventually, right? In the long run. So it's sort of clear that any company that's selling products to people, any retailer, needs to figure out how to interact with people through social media and through smartphones, and that's where the social genome technology comes in. It helps, helps understand customers as individuals. The genome technology analyzes what people say and what their friends are saying on Facebook and on Twitter, and tries to understand their interests so that we can market to them one-on-one products as opposed to marketing to them as a group.
Congratulations on being a successful serial entrepreneur. In fact, not only a serial entrepreneur, you're a serious entrepreneur. So I have a couple of questions for you. First is, you talked about licensing your patent versus selling your company, right? So that was one Mechanical Turk example that you gave. So can you shed light on what's best and at what stage of entrepreneurship of a company is it better to license the patents versus keeping them for themselves? And the other question is, so an entrepreneur like yourself cannot sit still, so what's next for you?
Okay, let's start with the first one. So in the case of Mechanical Turk, we had already decided at that point that the company wasn't working, and in fact the entrepreneurs we were not entrepreneurs at the point, we were investors who had actually worked with the entrepreneurs to create that company and had invested in it. But those entrepreneurs had moved on to do another company which we were investors in, so that patent was an asset that we had. So there was no company to sell, so we sold the patent. So in terms of when to sell a patent versus a company, I think if you have a company and it's an operating company, that's really the model, right? The patent is kind of a thing when you don't have an operating company or when you're winding down a company or something. It should be a last resort kind of thing, unless of course you're Apple and Microsoft doing Google or Android or something like that. The interesting thing is Walmart Labs is what's next for me. That's where I am right now, right? Walmart I think is in a very interesting position because we have both huge online and offline assets, right? So we have these all the internet companies. Walmart is unique in having 9,000 stores worldwide, and we have 1 billion people visiting our stores every month. Okay, so that's like huge. 1 billion people visiting stores every month, 1 billion physical visits. Is really huge, and all these people are now starting to carry smartphones. I think that's a very unique opportunity to build kind of the next generation of commerce. Sort of, we can look back at Amazon and say, look, we helped Amazon build the previous generation of commerce. Can we obsolete what we built and build the next generation of commerce, right? So that's kind of an interesting, motivating thing that it's always great. As a technologist, the thing that you want is that you want to build something that is used by millions of people and changes lives and touches millions of people. Walmart Labs, where I am right now, gives me that opportunity. So that's what's next for me.
this is a related question with that gentleman there. I'm a patent lawyer, so I would want to know your perspective on, let's say you want to start a new venture, what sort of due diligence you would do, because a lot of things you would want to do in future would already be covered through a patent or any kind of other kind of protection. So what kind of due diligence or process you have once you start your new project?
As an investor, when I'm investing in something?
Yeah, as an investor or from a technical approach, both.
Got it. You know, generally as a general belief in the technology space, I've sort of thought about patents more defensively than offensively, so I've never worried about, and I've always sort of figured, look, if we get big enough, if I invest in a company, and it gets successful enough for somebody to sue, so be it, right? So that's kind of the usual methodology. It's really hard to do. I'm just being pragmatic in my answer, right? So, or if I'm starting a company and it becomes important enough that somebody else wants to sue me, well, I'm doing something right? So that's always been my philosophy. That is great patent what you're doing as a defense against somebody who might want to sue you. But I don't, it's really hard to do research and say somebody has a patent on something and therefore I shouldn't do it. It's really hard to do that kind of stuff.
So, Anand, question for you is that in all these companies that, be it the companies that you started, Jungli and Cosmix, or the companies that you invested in, were there, just looking at the technology piece, was the technology of these companies superior to any at that time, with any of the competitors at that time, or was there any differentiators, or were they about the same and something else came along and that made these companies successful over the others?
In Jungli, it was totally Rakesh wearing the dress. No, I think to answer your question, I do believe that at every point in time, whether it was Jungli or Cosmix, I do believe that our technology was in fact better than what existed at that time. That alone doesn't guarantee success. You have to sort of apply it to the right market and get the right ecosystem around it, and so forth.
Hi Anand, I have a question which is probably a continuation. So you said you're a technologist at heart, and you also started a venture capital firm. So there is sometimes a disconnect between a great technology trying to find a market as opposed to the other way, right, where you have a problem and then you figure out the solution. How do you reconcile that as a venture capitalist, and what do you derive out of being a venture capitalist outside of all the financial gain and all that versus being an entrepreneur?
So I mean that's part of what I was trying to illustrate with that with that picture at the end, is that by not just by I not only do I invest, but I also mentor companies that I don't have an investment in, and what I get out of that is I get to see. I get a feeling of satisfaction, obviously, that I'm helping people. But I also get a chance to feel, look, I'm helping create the future. I can't do everything, obviously, right? I have only so much bandwidth, and there's so many interesting things to do. So I get a chance to participate in the future being created. And it's also, as a side effect, I get to meet a lot of interesting and wonderful people. Sometimes they end up being successful. Sometimes even if they're not, they end up doing other things, or they might become employees in other companies. And I also get to see into trends about what's hot, what's going on. That helps inform everything from academic research to other companies that I might want to do one day. So it's a very, very rewarding experience, and one that I treasure greatly.
You talked a little bit about your product and customer philosophy. Do you use something like what we hear about lean startup approach? There's the lean startup approach, or Steve